Hey everyone, thanks for joining. My name is Akash Trivedi. I'm a customer success manager with Microsoft. Sorry about the delay there. We had some link switches that we needed to do, but just like we planned it. Of course, something would go a little bit awry, but no worries. We'll get kicked off in maybe 5 more minutes. So please hang tight. If you can use the Q&A section, feel free to ask your questions there. I'm sure we'll get kicked off in just a little bit. But sorry about the delay and appreciate your patience. Just give it maybe 2 more minutes. And again, sorry about the delay. Should be kicked off very shortly. So thanks again for those that are joining. Please just give us 2 more minutes. We should be getting started very soon. Appreciate your patience there. Just running through some last minute changes, and once we're good to go, we'll kick it off.
And as Akash said, thanks everyone for joining. If you this is your Teams fundamentals class, so for many of you, you may be new to Teams. If you have questions that you want us to touch upon, or if anything that comes along the way, feel free to use the question and answer box and just start to post your questions. Myself and Brandon Boyd are here to also help support you in that angle. Akash will be doing our primary presentation, and then we're glad to help with your questions as well.
Thanks, Bonnie. And we'll give it maybe 2 more minutes and then we'll get it kicked off. Does that sound good? All right, well, we'll get kicked off now. And again, sorry about the little delay in the beginning there, but as Bonnie mentioned, my name is Akash Trivedi. I'm a customer success manager supporting our federal customers. And this is a Teams fundamental training. So we wanted to not only give you an overview of what is Teams, how does it look like, but also kind of make it real and really incorporate a scenario that gives you an end-to-end workflow. So you kind of start understanding like, okay, when we say Teams is a collaboration hub, what does that really mean, right? What does that really mean from a chat perspective? What is a team? How do you utilize a team? What's the difference between a team and the chat? All those type of questions that you might have already have been thinking yourselves, or if you're just net new to Teams and this is your first time kind of looking at it, it would be a great kind of overview to just see how you kind of engage with the platform. And hopefully by the end of it, we'll have answered a lot of your fundamental questions, and then from there you can always take it to the next step. So we do have the Q&A box that is available for people to ask questions, and we do have great moderators as well that will be responding to that too. And in between the session, we'll have some pauses where we'll try to see if there's any questions that I could address live, and in that way, try to get as most information to you as possible. So with that said, I want to start off the presentation by just kind of giving you a quick around the world of Teams and what are you looking at really. So this is Microsoft Teams that's opened on the web browser. There's two ways to really access Teams. One's on the web browser, as you kind of see right here with the the browser open and Microsoft Teams kind of presented. And really a 99% similar experience is on your desktop client. So if you look at my desktop at the bottom, there's the Teams application that's in there too. That's how I'm hosting the live event. So the biggest difference though, something to keep in mind is when you're looking at, should I use the client that's on my computer, or should you use something like a web browser? The only difference really is that if you're trying to use the web browser, screen sharing isn't really capable within the web browser right now. So your best practice is to use your desktop client, and then that way you can actually share your desktop. So depending on what your use case is, you can actually show your screen to the individuals that you're presenting to. But aside from that, we'll pretty much run through the entire demo on the web client. So you'll kind of see that all those capabilities are really inherent within the platform, and they've made it really well to kind of integrate with each other. So with that said, let me give you like a look around the world in Teams. So on the left, it's what I like to call like a navigation pane. So ultimately, you see activity, chat, Teams, calendar, calls, files, etc. So these are all the different applications that Team has within itself, and they all leverage the platform pretty well. So Office 365 is really the back end here, and Teams is right that unifying experience where you can click a different application and you get a different outcome from it. So as you kind of see, if I click through calendar, you'll see a calendar view. If I click through chat, there's a chat view, and I'll kind of go through that step by step as well. So at a high level though, on your navigation pane, first we'll start with activity. So if you're new to Teams, you might not have any activity, just like you're seeing here. So in this demo environment, nobody's really kind of interacted with me yet, but as you kind of see through the demo, you'll get more and more activities that populate throughout the course of our demo too. So think of activity as, the best way I like to compare it is if you have a smartphone and if somebody sends you a text message or if you get an email or any type of notification, how would you know that you even got that? So it pops up in your notification feed, right? Or somewhere on your phone. This is similar to that. It's think about that as your central activity or your central notification hub. So all activities that are done through Teams, they populate here. So it's a great way to just kind of quickly check, oh, such and such messaged me, oh, I got a notification, oh, I have to do this, etc. And again, through the demo, you'll kind of see that populate, so it'll make it real from there. Second thing is chat. So think of chat as a quick way to do a one-to-one chat or a one-to-many chat. So everybody's used to email, and email is not going away. It's actually heavily integrated within Teams itself, but also chat is a different way of just kind of going about that. And once you really start embracing the chat more and more, you'll start seeing that your dependency on email will start going down. And what that really translates to from a ROI, return on investment, or a value perspective is really you're saving time, right? You don't have to send a lengthy email to just get a quick conversation across. You can quickly just chat with a colleague and have him or her just kind of address the issue that you're doing, and then from there kind of manage it that way. So email is still there and it's great, but really the future of quick collaboration, one-to-one or one-to-many, is through chat. And again, we'll have that scenario in our demo here today. Teams is really the meat and potatoes of the application. So as you kind of see, as soon as I click Teams, different parts of the screen really changed. So at a very high level, and again, we'll dive into it, but what is a team? So if you think about the team as a group of people that need to work together for a specific outcome, right? And a team could be a group of people from your organization. It could be a group for your company. It could be a group of people that just have similar interests that want to get together. It could be a cross collaboration team. So ultimately think of a team as just a group of people that need to work together. So if the team itself is like the what, so in this case, here's an example of a team that I'm in, which is a government gift shop team. So if this is a group of people that worked in a gift shop environment, not necessarily geographically the same, but in the same kind of field, then that's the who, right? So think of a team as who needs to work together. So all these gift shop employees or people that are part of it needs to work together. And what do they need to work on are the channels. So anything that's below here, which are called channels. So in this case, there's a general channel. And again, I'll create a new team and you'll kind of see it from scratch of how it kind of builds upon itself. But if the team is the who, the channels are the what. And that's what you'll be working on. That's what the type of space that you'll get, individualized kind of personal space. So again, we'll talk more through that, but at a high level, a group of people that need to work together. So keep that in mind. Calendar is very similar to your Outlook experience that you might have today, where you set up a meeting that you want to have, a virtual conference in this case, and it shows up on your calendar. The good thing is that if you create a meeting in Teams, it'll show up on your Outlook calendar and vice versa as well. So we don't want to say that Outlook's going away, right? It's not the case at all. So if you're a heavy Outlook user, use your Outlook, create your meetings, and then they'll show up on Teams. or vice versa. If you're a heavy Teams user, create your meetings in Teams and it'll show up in Outlook. So right now I don't have any meetings scheduled on my calendar, and again through the demo I'll schedule some, so you'll see what that looks like. But the key point here is that there is a sync between Outlook and Teams calendar, and it pretty much functions the same way. So we'll dive into that scenario too. Calls as a separate entity, we won't really get into in this demo. We'll have more advanced sessions, but it will really depend on what your agency or your tenant itself has of as far as call capabilities. But ultimately, just know that if I'm chatting with somebody, or if I wanted to have a voice conversation with somebody, you don't necessarily need to go to the calls tab to do that. There's plenty of other ways to address that, and again, I'll show that in the demo. And lastly, files, and this is where we're going to kick off our demo also. So files is a place for your storage or all the documents that you've shared with different folks. And it's really divided in Teams into two ways. So if you see on the top here, you have a Recent and Microsoft Teams. So these are all the files that are in Teams that you're potentially part of. And then you have your OneDrive. So this is your own personal storage. This is where you create files and you own the rights to that, right? So this is your personal workspace. Nobody else has access to this unless you start giving people that access. So again, I'm new to Teams in this example. I don't have any files. So in our demo, we're going to start off by creating a file straight within Teams itself, putting it in OneDrive because it's going to be my file, and then eventually sharing it out with the community to understand, like, how would I do that in a digital setting, right? So especially now with the pandemic, everybody's working remotely. There's more and more need to actually get work done, but also from a very efficient fashion, right? Because just because you're not in the office together doesn't mean that you have to waste time in trying to find files, sort things, share things, etc. So Teams is actually a perfect use case for that, and hopefully we'll get through that. So which dives me into our kind of scenario itself. So between the application pane you have here, you kind of see the what we call the main arena in the middle. So again, depending on which application, the screen changes. And on the top, you'll see a search bar, and we'll get into that as well as an example, but a search is a very powerful tool within Teams. It'll search for people, chats, messages, files, etc. So keep that in mind. And again, as we go through the scenarios, you'll kind of see that in action as well. So that's kind of how it's really split up on top bar, navigation pane, and main arena. So with that said, just want to kick off in the scenario itself. So in this teleworking scenario, I'm part of a strategic communications group that creates comms for not only my department, but for the enterprise itself, right? So try to envision a project that you want to do yourself. In this case, my project that I'm tasked with doing is creating a teleworking guidelines document. So what I want to do is I want to create that document, and I want to collaborate with my team, and then eventually make it official, post it on a team that we all work on, and then eventually disseminate that to the enterprise. So how would we go about doing that? So first things first, I know that I actually work with a couple of colleagues, so Brandon, Bonnie, etc. They're all part of the same team that I'm in. So what I first want to do is quickly get a chat going with them and see if they're ready to actually start working on it. Previously, you might be sending emails, but in this case, I'm just going to quickly start chatting with them. So how do I go about doing that? So a couple of ways. So one's actually looking at the chat application on the left that I kind of talked to before, or you can actually create a new chat from the top here as well. So right next to the search bar, there's a little chat bar. So if I click that, you'll notice on the left, it'll automatically put me into a chat. And it's just a quick way of trying to start finding somebody or trying to start creating a new chat. Really does the same job. So it's up to you how you want to select that. So here I know I want to work with Brandon. So I'll start searching for Brandon, and you see that his name pops up. I also want to maybe start searching for Bonnie, and you see her name pops up as well. So these are going to be any people within your tenant, right? So if your organization has it, if your agency has Teams, anybody who has migrated, you can start searching for them and quickly just populate their names right here. So I've put both of them in a chat here, as you see, Brandon and Bonnie, and all I have to say is, hi, are you ready to start working on this project? So at the bottom here, I'm typing a message. I can either press enter, or I can click this little send button here too to send off that message. And as soon as I send that, both Bonnie and Brandon in this case will get that message. So I've effectively created a chat with two individuals at the same time while I'm actually doing my work, right? So if they're available, and in this demo environment, not everybody is going to be available at all times. So in this demo environment, I'll have them. I also just realized that, hey, you know what? Instead of just creating a one-on-one chat, maybe I want to actually add more people too, right? So I have Bonnie, I have Brandon, but let me see if Shane's also available. So how do I add even more people to this? So if you see on the top right, there's a little button to add more people. I can click that, and I could say add people. You see the people that are already present in the chat as well are right here. And I can say add people. And for adding, I'll just say, let me add Shane if he's available. And then I have a choice to, do I want to include the previous history that we just talked about? Do I want to include everything? Well, you know what? I do want to include everything. So the good thing about Teams is it allows you to take advantage of that persistent chat that's already there. So say in this example, I'm going to say I want to include all history. So what that really means is I added Shane. He's now in this conversation. He can see the previous chats that we've had. In certain situations, you might have a case where you don't want to include that previous history, in which case just say Shane's a new person, and then he or she wouldn't see, what the previous history is. In this case, Shane's added too, so I could say, Shane, can we start working on this document? And see if he's available to start helping as well. So either way, the messages are now going to everybody, and quickly one-on-one, we can see that message. So one thing you just quickly saw, oh, I saw a notification that Shane just reacted to something. So what does that mean? So if you saw that normal messages that I posted here have no kind of interaction there, but the one that Shane sent has a little thumbs up on the top right. So he actually clicked the post and actually liked the post itself. So similarly, I can like my own messages because I just send awesome things. So I'll click yes. So it's just like that, he could actually react to the message. So these reactions, although are really developed in Teams to have kind of a sticky type of vibe, right? Very user friendly, something fun, something creative that people can do to engage. But it's also very functional because this way Shane didn't have to respond to anything. He can just quickly just give a thumbs up. I could hover over that thumbs up and I know that, okay, he's kind of ready to start working on this document with me as well. I also noticed that at the bottom, Brandon started chatting as well. So it means that he's also part of this conversation. So he says, hello, Akash and Shane. I'm like, great. So now we have a quorum of people together already that are dispersed geographically all over the place, but now we're actually chatting in a group together, right? So great way to quickly do this versus an email chain where somebody replies all, somebody might not reply all. I think we've all been through that experience. So I think in this case, a chat, whether it's a one-on-one or whether it's a group chat, has a similar effect, but way more faster to communicate. So one quick thing before we start getting into the scenario a little bit more is, we have a chat here, right? At the top, you kind of see it's Bonnie, Brandon, Shane, and myself. So I know that this group of folks actually is the hardcore strategic comms team. So instead of having this chat just labeled for individuals' names, I can actually change the name of the chat too. So at the top, there's a little pencil icon. I can click it, and I have an option to actually name the chat. So I'll say Strat Comms for our org. Our org is PMO 33, and I'll say save. So if you see that the name of the chat has now changed, but it's not just changed for me, and this is the value here. It's changed for everybody in this group. So now anytime Shane, Brandon, myself, Bonnie, whoever sees this chat, they could see that the name of the chat in your recent section, if you see here, has become StratComms PMO 33. So you always know what the context of that chat is, and it's always at your fingertips in that sense. Because the more you start working in Teams, you see this recent section, it'll start populating more and more and more with Teams or with the chats that you have, because it keeps that persistent chat history, and then you can always refer back to it. So even if I'm on leave, vacation, if I'm deployed, whatever it might be, I can always come back and pick up where I left off, right? So it's a great kind of advantage within Teams itself. So now, advancing the scenario a little bit, we kind of talked about the people that I wanted to work with are on board. So now I want to start sharing actually the file that I want to start working on. So I don't have anything created right now, so let me quickly go ahead and create the draft in our files section, as I kind of mentioned. So I'll click on files. I know that people are ready to work on this file, and I'll click on OneDrive, because again, I'm creating the file, I want to own it until it's ready for the bigger team to have. So since I don't have any files in my OneDrive, I can go ahead and quickly create a new one. So on the top, there's a new button. I'll click that. It gives me a couple of choices of what type of document. In this case, since it's a Word doc, I'll just keep it very simple. I'll say Word document, and I'll give it a name. So I'll say Working Draft, and I'll say create. So immediately you'll see that it doesn't go outside somewhere to open up Word. It opens Word within Teams itself. And again, it's that ease of kind of the flow, right? You don't want to leave the application. You don't want to go somewhere else. You don't want it to open necessarily somewhere else and distract you. You can if you wanted to, but in this case, it kind of takes that workflow element and makes it very simple. So I'll just say, okay, here's the document that I want. I want a summary here and a table here. Let's just say that's the whole kind of, I want to kick it off by just doing this, and maybe like a notes section here. So I want now the team that I'm working with in that chat to start working on this document. So how do I give them access to the same document that I own? So let's go back. Let's close it out. And you notice that I didn't have to click save or anything. Teams allows it to auto save, uses again the Office 365 application platform, and then that way it's constantly auto saving. And now this new document called Teleworking Draft is in my OneDrive. And if I hover over all the way to the right, you see that there's a sharing column. So what that means is, okay, this document's in my OneDrive, but I haven't shared it with anybody because it's private. And again, that's the intent, right? It's my OneDrive, my workspace. I own the document until I start sharing. So let's start sharing now. So I can go back to the chat. And again, because of the chat history is there, the recent chat's right here at my fingertips. And instead of kind of emailing that file back and forth, a quick way to do it is just add it to this chat. So how do I do that? So at the bottom of the chat, there's a little paperclip icon, if you kind of see here. If you hover over it, it even says attach. I can click it, and then it'll ask me, do you want to upload something from your computer or from your OneDrive? So just right now, I uploaded that, or I created that document in OneDrive, so I know that it's there, so I'll say OneDrive. And it'll look at the exact same OneDrive folder that we opened up when I clicked here, right? The same one document that I had in there is here. I can click it, and at the bottom, there's an option to say share. So as soon as I click share, it'll immediately pop that into the chat box, and I can say, team, please start working on this. And I'll click send, or I can click enter. And then this way, that document is immediately now sent to these individuals. It even gives me a notification, says I've shared something. So if you take a step back and just kind of see what happened is, I didn't take the document and really copied it into this chat. All I did was, behind the scenes, is it took a link and it gave that link to everybody in this chat, and thereby giving everybody permissions to go in the document and actually edit it. So it's a big difference between, or a big shift in if you think about it, of how collaboration is done. So instead of sending files left and right and not understanding the versioning, here there's only one version. There's one document that I have given access to, and I'm still the owner of this document right now. And if I go back to files really quick, just want to show you guys, if I click on OneDrive again, you'll see that before it was private here, now it's shared. So later on in more advanced sessions, we can even get into what does that sharing model look like? What type of permissions do we have to give them? Maybe sometimes you just want to give read-only access, right? We can only get to that level. So for now, though, just know that basic sharing in chat will give them the permissions to actually edit the document. So let's take a look at the document itself and see what's inside. So again, I'll click the document. I don't have to go back to files and open it. It's the same document because ultimately it's a link, right? So I click the link. And again, I just want to quickly edit it within Teams. So if I say edit, it automatically says edit in Teams. There are other options as well where I can go ahead and edit this in Word Online. I can edit it on Word on the desktop if I have it to, but in this case, I just have it here. So now if I wanted to keep the chat that what we were having, right, that was on the side. But if I want to keep that same chat alive here while I'm working on this document, all I have to do is at the top right, there's a little chat box here. And you see that the conversation that we were having before is also live here. So I could say, I could mention Shane and Brandon. Can we please start getting into the doc now? And then that way they'll get a message saying that, hey, please let's start chatting in the document itself. So what I really want to do is start co-authoring this document within Teams. And again, if you take a step back and just kind of see what's happening, we started a chat, we created a file within Teams. Everybody who's in that team got access to this file, and hopefully they can get into the file as well. And we can start really making changes together in a collaborative environment as we kind of move forward, right? So in the summary, if I wanted to say, guidelines for working from home, and then have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever that might look like. And as soon as if somebody got into the document, I'm sure they'll popping in very soon, but they'd start coming in too. So before they pop in, I'll kind of go back and just kind of see what that looks like. And I see, okay, right here, I see 1, 2, 3, I see some people just popped in. So how do I know who's actually in the document as well? If you look at the top right, and I hover over it, I can see who's in this document. So, okay, Brandon's already in the document. You see I didn't type that, he's typing that research all information. I can even locate where he is in the document, and that's very powerful too, because if you think about it, in a real world scenario, and this happens all the time at Microsoft too, we're working on a PowerPoint brief and multiple people have different sections. So if 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people are in a document together working, making their changes, you can actually jump to the specific location that they are and then just kind of see in real time what are they doing, what are they editing. So here I can even put the second steps would be help codes, etc. So as I'm typing, he could be typing, we all could be in the same spot together. This is true collaboration and co-authoring happening instantaneously within Teams. So again, take a step back, share the document, we're in the document together. We haven't left the application at all. And now here comes, we have Shane that's arriving to the party as well. So multiple people in a document, and oh, by the way, we're in a meeting together as well, right? So if you think about what you're doing as an attendee for this training, you're watching a training that's being streamed live. You're coming into the application, you're seeing what's happening, you're seeing the editing. If you were part of our demo tenant, we could have invited you here as well, and you could be sharing as well. So it's a very powerful tool, and you can all really get on the same page. And ultimately, the whole goal is to make a decision, right? So in this case, we're working on this draft. We want to actually make a decision and then disseminate that information. So sticking to the mission at hand, right? Sticking to what our tactical kind of project is right now is creating this document, formalizing it. So with that said, say we're done with this document, right? And I'll just click close. I didn't have to save again. Whatever the last changes are made by whoever gets auto-saved, and every time that save happens, that same document gets updated, so we don't have to worry about versioning. It's all kind of tracked for you automatically. But say in the scenario we want to move forward now. We talked about, we talked about what we needed to as far as the document's good, we're collaborating together, we've got the buy-in from the right people. I'll even ask the group, should we start posting this to our new team? And I'll say if we don't have one, I'll create one. So so now I'm asking the same team, like, okay, well, I think we're good to go where we left off. What I really want to do is now start moving the focus onto a team, because at one point I got the inputs of all the people that need to start working on this document. Once we're satisfied, now I want to make it a team document, right? I want to get everybody's input in it, and then that way kind of connect with the audience there too. But before I do that, I just want to kind of pause real quickly. Do we have any questions that I can help address as far as what we've covered so far?
Perfect timing. There's a couple of things. Is your mic open? Okay. So two things. What's the difference in terms of features when starting a chat group versus starting it in a team? Why would they start it in a chat conversation versus a Teams channel conversation? So if we could highlight that.
Sure, thanks, Bonnie. And that's a great question too, and that's why I think the example that I'm showing hopefully tries to help it. So I'll kind of explain a little bit more as well. So initially I started a chat and not a team because, if you think back, what is a team? It's the entire group of people, right? So even though I'm working right now with just a small subset, like 3 or 4 people that only specifically are on this project, so I created a chat group that we're chatting, we're sharing that file and working on it. It's still a draft, right? As a best practice, and it'll change for your organization, for your business behavior as well. But in my case, I wanted to start the draft with a few folks, in this case, this chat group. And then once I move to a bigger community, my entire PMO, I then want to put it into Teams so that everybody can access that document. So I think as we move to the example, you'll kind of see that a little bit better. But ultimately, if you're doing collaboration between 1 or 2 or 3 people, you could technically do it in the team. But in my experience, like, it's better to just kind of have a small group of a chat going. We can edit the files, and then once it becomes bigger, once the project becomes more alive, once we need more sets of eyes, instead of adding a lot more people to this chat, I'd rather just have a team, which adds more capability as well. And as we move to the demo, you'll kind of see that capability as well.
We might also want to highlight where it's stored, because one of the things that Akash did share, if you may have noticed, is the back end for all these group chats is really your OneDrive, right? So if you think of that in terms of OneDrive is your more private area, whereas once you get into the team, as Akash said, it's broader. That's some of the differentiation too.
Yeah, that's a great point, Bonnie. So yeah, currently, again, I'm still the owner of this document. It lives still in my files section under my OneDrive. And then once we get into a team, I'll point out a very fundamental difference that Bonnie just mentioned, is that it becomes the Teams document, which is a SharePoint document, which everybody can access. So then I remove the need for me having my own personal version of it, because it's our version, right? And that's that change in mentality and change in behavior that we want to kind of start talking about more and more, so that when we talk about how are users going to really adopt this platform, it's when they understand these differences. So great call out there, Bonnie. Thank you. Any other questions before I move on? Okay, I'll just keep pressing. So yeah, and keep the questions coming. I'm sure the team is really busy just moderating the Q&A. So please, if you have questions, please feel free to pop them in there. So now we kind of talked about, again, you know, we're working on this document. We're kind of satisfied. We want to start pushing it forward to a team. And what does that look like? And again, from the reasoning perspective, I want to put it to that team because I want broader input, right? We're done with the draft now. Maybe we want some of the expended teams to actually take a look at it, review it potentially, and then, at least from our PMO perspective, approve it so that then we can disseminate to the broader enterprise. So how do we do that? So first things first, let me go to our teams. So I'll click on the teams section here on the left. And then from there, as I see, there's no PMO 33 team, right? And again, if you're new to teams, you don't have any team, it'll just look blank, right? You're not part of any teams. In this case, I'm only part of this government gift shop team. And now I want to actually start, you know, creating that team for our PMO. So a quick way to do that is all the way at the bottom of teams, there's a little join or create team option. I'll click that. And it gives me a couple of options here. One, which we're going to do in this example, is actually create the team from scratch, right? So it's a wizard, so it'll guide you through the process. So you don't have to really memorize the steps. Just know that once you kick off the process, it'll make sure you have all the information in place, and of course you can refine it as you go. So that's one option. Second option is using a code. So if a team has already been created, and this is a good example for a lot of bigger agencies, or if you have a use case where let's say you're supporting leadership and you want to create a team for your organization or your leadership, and you're going to kind of run that, then as the admin for that team, you would create it and you would use a code and then just start adding people or giving people that code so they can put in that code and then bypass any type of security and just get into that team. So that's another option. And again, we covered that in more of the advanced scenarios, but I'll kind of briefly showcase where that is as well. So you can either create a team from scratch. If you have a team created, use the code to enter that team. You can search for teams that are open to the public. So if you look at these teams, champion team, it says public, and there's 2 members, right, in this demo environment. So this is a good example of where if I click this team, I can just join the team. I don't have to ask for permission. So why would you have a public team versus something that you're creating specifically small? And I think this is a great example, because if you think about a champions team, or maybe you have a help desk team, or a team that even though your organization has, you probably just don't know if that team exists or who's the right POC for that. So if a public team was created, you could potentially go in there, ask your questions, get your questions answered, take it back to your communities, and then share that information. And I think from a champions perspective, that's the kind of model that we want to follow as well, is, you know, have the champions ask the questions, bring it back to your respective orgs and agencies and whatnot, and then spread that information so people actually learn more effectively. But I'll digress a little bit from that. Ultimately, just know that there's a private team and there's a public team. So in our example, since we're just our PMO is only 10 to 12 people, I'm just going to create a private team just specifically for that PMO. So I'll say create team, and 2 options from here is if you had an existing group or build from scratch. So I'll just build from scratch because I'm starting that new. And this is where you make that decision, right? Do you want to create a private team or do you want to create a public team? So in this case, private team. And now I give it a name. So I'll say PMO 33 Strat Comms. And depending on your agency, you might want to think about naming conventions. What's the best practice? How do we really kind of balance out so that everybody's kind of creating teams in the same way? So just something to kind of put a pin on so you can kind of focus on that later. And I'll say create. As soon as I hit create, just like that, what Teams does in the back end, it creates the shell of a team. But if you remember, I began the kind of presentation saying, what is a team? So it's a group of people, right? So the who. So in this case, I created the shell, but I don't have anybody in there yet. So how do who should I add in here? So I know that, of course, I created the team, so I'm there by default. I know that I want to add Brandon because we were working on it together. I know Shane's working on it with me. I'll even add Bonnie. And then there's a lot more people in our team, but for now, I'm just going to add 3. So again, you have the flexibility of adding people as they come, which is going to be, of course, a use case because as new members join the team, you're going to add them. Some people might leave the organization, etc. So you have that flexibility. I'll click add, and here's where another decision is made. So initially, as I add people, they are listed as members. And if I look at the drop down, I have 2 options, member or owner. So Both members and owners contribute, collaborate, they share documents, they can look at files, etc. So the true collaboration definitely happens whether you're an owner or a member. The only elevated permissions that owners have is they can actually delete content, they can delete the team, they kind of quarterback the entire team as far as the policies for the team go, etc. So just know that it's always best practice to have at least more than one owner on your team. For the sake of continuity of operations, right? So if something happened to me, if I was reassigned, if I was deployed, if I was on extended paternity leave, whatever that might look like, you want to ensure that all your conversations, all your files, all that true collaboration that's happened within your team maintains and exists, and also that people can, administer it properly. So best practice, have at least more than one owner. But in this case, I'll just make Bonnie an owner as well, so that way I'm kind of good to go. And I'll say close. So now, just like you saw before, I have a team for Government Gift Shop. Now I have a team for PM133. And right off the bat, I get assigned this general channel. So, and even the gift shop one has a general channel, right? So if I click on the team, you'll see that. So initially I kind of said that the team is the who and the channel is the what, right? So what is the purpose of this general channel? And what is the purpose of a different channel, for example? And I'll kind of touch on that right now. So think of the general channel that comes by default with any team as the lobby for your team. So this is your opportunity to say, hey, we created this team. This is what the guidelines for this team is, especially if you're from a leadership perspective, you're saying, what COAs are we going to follow? What's the standard process? What SOPs are we going to follow? Whatever that might look like. This is a good opportunity to put that information here. But in general, like people can access this and see how many people are in the team, who's leaving, who's getting added. If there's any kind of documents that you want to share that's widely acceptable to every member, you can do it here as well. But if not, the best practice is to create separate channels, right? So for the purposes of our demo here, I want to kind of show you what's a good way to announce to this group or this team that, hey, this is created, here's our workspace, and oh, by the way, we're going to use it for strategic communications, right? So let me show you that real quick. So here's a bad example of communication, and I'm purposely doing this because I just want to show you the difference and the value that a team and a channel brings versus what you get in chat, right? So if I were to do it just like a chat, I can start typing here and I can say, please read important guidelines for the team, and I'll just correct that. And I'll just post that. So as you see, it's kind of like a chat message that you saw before, a little bit different because these are considered conversations. And the whole reason for that is because there's a little reply button to each. And I'll get into that in a little bit, but just know that, conversations and chats pretty much the same. Obviously within a team, you have the option to you see this, but I'll kind of get to that in a little bit. But so this is good, okay, fine. I've posted something, please read this, whatever that might be. It's important, and here are the guidelines for the teams, etc. And I can list those guidelines here if I wanted to. But I think more importantly, I really want something that's going to be in your face and bold, and especially if if I'm a leader of some sort and if I want to make sure everybody looks at it and pays attention, I want it to be more robust and actionable. So how do I do that? So next to the format button, or next to the attach button, there's a format option. So if I click on that little painter there, you'll see that the next conversation that I'm about to post already is a richer environment, right? So here I can add a title to it, or a subject similar to an email. I can add tables, I can add paragraphs, I can format it, etc. A lot more robust options. But this is still a conversation. It's still just kind of a rich conversation because it even says on the top, new conversation. But instead of that, if I wanted to make an announcement that's going to be out there in bold, how do I do that? So next to the conversation, there's a little drop down button. I'll click that and it will say, you know what, instead of a conversation, I want to make an announcement. So I'll click on that. So now you see that, oh, wow, you have this like banner type, headline type image where, hey, put something here. So I'll say important, please read ASAP. And as a subheading, I'll say, please like this post once read. So I'm giving it a call to action as well here, and say in the body, I'll just put like some bullet points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and whatever your purpose is, right? If I wanted to change the color of this and make it really attention getting, I'll even change it to red, so it's really in your face. If you have some custom signage, if you have custom logos, whatever your agency department, etc. might have, here's a great way to customize it too, so you can even customize the background image there. And I'll click post, and you'll see the big difference between when I posted like a normal conversation versus when I posted as an announcement. You even see like a little announcement call out here too. So here is a much more effective way of using Teams, and this kind of announcement feature is only within the channel also. So not only am I saying, you know, hey, this team is meant for this purpose, please read this. I'm even giving a call to action. So once people in my team read this, they can actually go ahead and click like. And I kind of mentioned that those reactions to posts, right? If I can like my own posts as I did before, but those reactions to posts are also pretty, you know, beneficial. And how do I know that right now? So here's another example of what I can say. I could say within the post itself, I want to reply because I want to keep the context of what I'm trying to do out there. So I can say, I can @mention Shane, I can @mention Brandon, and say, can you please read this so I know that you have right. So I'm giving it a call to action in my initial post. I said this and I post that there. So you see, it didn't show up as another conversation. It just kind of clicked on, and that clicking on type of thing is called threading within Teams. So again, you don't have to worry about the nomenclature about that, but understand that it's creating a thread of conversations, right? So when I said, can you please read this? If it was a new post like here, can you please read this? You might be confused. You're like, okay, well, I'm reading this, but what is this that you're referring to, right? So it's a bad way of communicating because I didn't give any details, I didn't give any specifics. But in reality, if you just read this, which is tied to this post, you kind of know that the quote unquote this is actually referring to the post that I made. So it's a great way to keep the context alive and understand what led to a specific decision point, right? And one more thing, like I kind of mentioned, hey, I asked them to kind of do something, and if I click over now and hover over, I see Shane actually responded. So it's a quick way for me to even do an audit, right? Of like how many people have seen this and accepted it. And trust me, we use this all the time at Microsoft, where a new guideline or a new update is out there, or something that we're helping our customers with, new resources, whatever that might be. It's shared from our corporate side, and then we acknowledge it to say that, okay, we've read that, we know how to engage, etc., and how to disseminate that information. So a great kind of tip there where, you know, best practice wise, use your reply button versus just creating new conversations. Because at the end of the day, this whole history will be there within the team. So you can scroll up and then, hey, maybe 2 days, 2 months, 2 years later, whatever your team is, you can come back to that post and actually reply specifically to that message versus confusing people on the other side. So sorry, I just quickly wanted to kind of show that announcement feature. But now going back to the scenario, right? We had that document. I wanted to put that as a part of the team. So I kind of mentioned before, you want to create a separate workspace or channels or the what, right? So I want to start talking about strategic comms documents itself. So instead of putting everything in the general channel, I want to create a separate workspace. So I'll click on these little 3 buttons here. And you'll notice that within Teams, anywhere there's 3 buttons, it'll give you more actions, and they'll be really your best friend throughout your journey. So anytime you click it, you'll see that there's so much more stuff you can do. And in this case, I want to add another channel, another workspace, another topic, however you want to kind of think about that. And in this case, I'll say teleworking discussions, right? So people know that this specific new channel that's being created is only meant for teleworking discussions. So you kind of see it just adds on, right? So within the team, now I have a general channel. If I click that general channel, you'll see what the post we just made. And also I have a teleworking discussions channel where now I can start talking about only things related to teleworking discussions. And notice everybody in the team does have access to any channels that you make. So even if you created 5 to 10 different channels and shared different files, anybody who's part of that team has access to those files, and you'll kind of see that in my example. But now for the simplicity's sake, I just want to share that file that we created so that our broader team can start working as a collaborative workspace versus just kind of a group chat that we had before. So similar to before, how I clicked on the paperclip icon, I can do the exact same process. If I wanted to click on files, I can click on files and add the file there too. But just for the sake of consistency, I'll do the same approach, right? I'll click attach, and it'll again kind of give me the same options. Do you want to upload from your computer? Do you want to do it from OneDrive? In this case, I got a couple more options where it's saying like, hey, maybe you have a file in a specific team that you're already part of. Do you want to use that file? In this case, no, I know that my file exists in my OneDrive. So I'll click that. And you'll see here that same teleworking draft that we were working before. It's right here. I'll click it. And notice one big difference, right? Now it says upload a copy. Before it said share. So what does that mean? So when I click on that, now it's actually making a copy of that document that's in my OneDrive and making a copy of that and posting it to this team. And I know I'm sure there's a lot of questions that are clicking in your head right now, like, okay, what does that mean as far as the other documents that you had, or you know, what does that mean for the OneDrive perspective? And where does that stay? Where does that kind of live? And I'll show you that in 1 second. So I'll say, please edit this when you can. This is the final document. And I'll just post that. So as soon as I post that in now, it appears as a conversation. People can reply to it if they wanted to as well. But even if I click on the Files tab, you probably guessed it, it's going to show up here as a file as well. So again, these files, because they're associated to the teleworking discussions channel or topic, they won't show up under general, right? And that's kind of the idea there, is where you don't want to confuse folks. You want to make it easy for people to find something. So if me as a team member, say I got added tomorrow and I wanted to find out where would the teleworking document be? Well, in my team, there's a teleworking discussion channel. Let me go click on files from there and I'll probably see it, which in case this is. So now when we click on this file and we look at the same edits that were made before, and let's say we made more edits here, and I'll just give you an example. I'll click edit, and let's say I just delete everything that we just talked about, and I'll click close. So now that change is made into this document and into this channel that lives here. So now if I go back to my OneDrive, for example, that file still exists here, right? Because we created a copy. But if you notice, the last modified date or time was 21 minutes ago. So it had no impact on the document that I had in my OneDrive, because effectively I have two copies, right? One's in my OneDrive, which was the draft, and the final version, the source of truth, is now living on the team. And it would behoove me to just delete this document now, because I don't want to confuse myself or other teammates about that document. So even if I go ahead and delete this, you'll see that going back to the team, that document in the files is still there, and this is a source of truth. So all updates made from henceforth are living within this team. And the back end of that is a nice little SharePoint library that helps you sort things out. And again, in more advanced sessions, we can talk about how do you potentially organize that a little bit better, potentially managing different access, etc. But for now, just know that anybody who's part of this team, the PMO33 team, can access the general channel, they can access the teleworking discussions channel, and they can even access all the files that are in these specific public channels. And before I get into private channels and a little bit more detail within teams, any questions? I just want to take a quick pause, Bonnie, if there's anything out there, Brandon, that for me to address.
Sure. Why would you create a chat and name it rather than communicating directly in the relevant channel? And I know this is something you have a passion on.
Yes, I do. So this is great. So it's almost like a prop question. I feel like I love it. So what I love about this is, let's go back to chat, right? And the same chat that we had before. Now we have like 4 or 5 members in this chat. And if I said this teleworking draft, let's say I'll just kind of add some garbage data here. Think of these chats that happened here as like days of the past, right? Like multiple conversations have happened. You have no idea, what the context is. But now I wanted to refer back to this document. I would have to ask the team, because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. I would have to say, team, what's the latest on the document? And also somebody might just say, which document? Or somebody might say, what are you referring to? Or what's going on? So these conversations, as you see, there's no threading engaged at all. There's no way for me to track this. There's nothing else there. It's because we're in a small group, I can kind of see what's happening within this chat. But if the minute you start having 10, 15 people in a group chat, which does happen, you're going to have conversations that are good for the time in place, but in the long term, it's hard to sort and it's hard to find information. So instead, if the same file which currently exists in the teleworking draft, if I just kind of replied to that specific document within the threading, and I said, team, and I can even be specific and say at Shane, for example, did you make your updates? So contextually, Shane knows that I'm talking about this document to make the updates. It's all kind of threaded within that conversation, and I can go into different channels, different working groups. Maybe if it's even the same people, right? So in this PMO 33, it's the same subset of folks, but now I have such a great way to dive into specific topics, specific people, and specific conversations for that topic to get the context that I want. So I think when you talk about why use a chat, why name that chat, or why come here, it's really up to you and how you want to balance the way you do work. But as a best practice, if you're trying to share information with the team, share it in the team itself in the channel. Hopefully that addressed it, and happy to take it offline too. And you know, I'm very passionate about that topic. So
let's see. If you created a team, is there a way to start a chat with the team rather than adding everyone individually?
Create a team. So yeah, so I mean, yes. So anybody who's in this team, right, effectively you can start chatting with. So if I had just a general message for everybody within this team, I could just start a new conversation here within the team itself, and I could @mention the entire team. So instead of saying @Shane or @Bonnie or @whoever, I'm saying @team, so @PMO. You see that comes up as an option. And by the way, and thanks for pointing this out. Actually, I apologize. I forgot to kind of mention the @ symbol is a way to really direct people's attentions to something, right? So if I just type in PMO 33, please read this, you know, it's just a message that shows up. It's not directing anything, right? But instead of that, if I did the @ symbol and then PMO, you see that it comes up as an option, right? So again, these concepts are used from like social media, social networking, Facebook, Twitter, etc., all those platforms, where by using the @ symbol, you're creating kind of a virtual tap on the shoulder to either an individual, to either a team, or even to a channel. And that way they're getting notifications. So if I say @PMO StratComms, please read this, now the entire team got a notification and they can start chatting with replies to that specific thing, right? If I had a question or whatnot. The only difference is, and you know, as you probably saw by now, if people start replying here, it's public information, right? Public as in sense like everybody in that team can read that. So the only differentiator would be if you wanted to have something that nobody else reads, that's private maybe, or you're talking about something else or a different initiative, then either take it to a different chat and talk to them separately because that's your private space, or which comes to my next point, is create a private channel within that team so you can talk to a subset of individuals privately. And that's what I'm going to get into right now. But in the meantime, is there anything else, Bonnie, that I need to touch on?
Can someone who is not in the specific team see the info?
No, so and that also will help in the next transition piece, which is great. So anybody in the government gift shop who's not part of the PMO 33 cannot see, they don't even see the team itself. So it's all kind of boxed out from the team itself. Once you add the person to the team, so say Bonnie is in government gift shop and Bonnie is in StratComms, and maybe and Bonnie can see everything that's in the general channel. She can see everything that's in the teleworking discussion channel. She could potentially see everything in the general channel here as well. So these are all public channels within that team because Bonnie is in both teams. But once I create a private channel, which is going to be exactly the next thing that I'm going to do, then if Bonnie's not invited to that channel, then she couldn't see that, even though she's part of that team.
Very quickly, I know we covered something about sharing files, but we have a question. Let's see. Can I show a video as a document to others on my team? I wasn't sure how you wanted to cover that.
Can I show a video? Yeah, so if Stream is enabled in your tenant, so as a GCC platform, Stream is something that's available. It's really up to your organization if they've allowed it or not. Stream would be a great way to upload, say, video content, recorded meeting sessions, whatever that might be. And through Stream, you could potentially put it right in your channel too. So I'll quickly show you what that kind of looks like without actually doing it. But say in the teleworking discussions, I wanted to post a video of maybe it's a training, maybe it's this meeting that we're going through right now. you see these little plus signs that are within each channel. That gives you options to add more I guess, applications. So I'll click on the plus sign, and you'll see all the different options that I have. So yeah, I have the basic Word, Excel, PowerPoint. I do also have something called Planner, which is a great task management tool, PowerPoint, Power BI, but you see the stream option is right here too. So what I could potentially do is I can put the stream in there and then upload the specific video that I want to. And then that way everybody has access to those videos or those recordings for that team. If it's just a one-on-one video share, what I would do is I would take the link from the stream. And again, this might go into more of an advanced session, but whatever video is out there in stream, take the link and then just share it in a one-to-one or a one-to-many chat with that individual, and they'll be able to kind of see that too. All right. I'll keep pressing, and thanks again for answering the questions in the Q&A. These are good questions, so I like being engaged myself. So thank you for keeping me honest there too. So I'll keep pressing. So something that does come up a lot, and it was one of the most requested features in government all up, because it's just so important, right? You want to have a private discussion within a public team. So how do you do that? How do you kind of manage a private channel? And luckily this feature is in GCC. So what you would do is the same way I created this teleworking discussion, same me and Shane, we want to have a private kind of collaborative space within the team so that I don't have to create multiple teams. And then that way we can keep, whether it's discussions on performance evaluations, maybe it's discussions on salary, maybe it's discussions on just in general different projects that might be sensitive and not open for others. Whatever reasoning might be, if I wanted to create a conversation with a subset of people within this team, then how do I do that? So the same way as we did before, I'll click on our friend, the ellipses here, and you see add a channel, same like we did for teleworking discussions. But this one I'll call HR questions, for example. And at the bottom, you see there's a privacy segment. Before I didn't toggle this because it by default was standard, but here, if I make it into private, what happens is it literally creates a quote unquote secret / private channel within that team. So I click next. And then it says, okay, who do you want from that team? Now, granted, I mentioned subset a couple of times, and the reason for that is you can only add people who are part of that team, right? So within PMO, I'm going to add Bonnie, or I wanted to add Shane and not Bonnie in this case. So I'll click add. So now, of the people who are in PMO 33, as of now, and I'll make Shane an owner as well, as of now, only Shane and myself can even see this HR team. So I'll click done. And you'll kind of see that right now. So now I have this HR questions channel, right? It's a private channel indicated by a little lock because you know that it's private. And only those people who are in that channel or that I just invited can see that. So for Bonnie, she wouldn't even see the existence of this at all. So when she goes to PMO 33, all she sees is general and teleworking discussion. So it's really up to your use case of why you should create a private team, what's the need for it, and what type of information you're sharing. But just know that it is a subset of the team. And then, of course, you could always create a separate team and just add those folks separately if you wanted to, versus create a channel. So there's some best practices that we do have some guidelines on. So I really encourage you to start reading on that, and please reach out to us as well. We're more than happy to help on that. But that's in general, hopefully, the private channels. I won't get into too much on what you can do. It's pretty much the same. There is some limitations on which apps. So before the general channel, as I'll show you, you'll see that all these different apps are here. In your private channel, you'll see that some of them aren't there, right? Some of them might be different. So there are some nuances, and there's some public information available for what's possible, what's not in a private channel. So we'll touch on that a little bit later. Now, going back to the team. So we're having a great discussion. We've uploaded the final document here. Our organization is ready to publish this document. But before we do that, wouldn't it be nice if we just got into a meeting together and just talked about it, right? So we've been collaborating on chat, in the document, in the team, nice conversations happening. But now I really want to start maybe verbally talking about it, right, and sharing it. So not everybody probably is in Teams right now, so I just want to invite them to a meeting. So there's a couple of ways. So one thing is, like I said before, I can go to calendar and set up a designated time. So I know that we want to discuss this, say, at 3 p.m. Eastern. So I'll select that time slot. I'll add the title, teleworking discussion meeting. I can add the required people, and this is an open meeting, so maybe I want to collaborate with people that are not in my team. Maybe it's anybody else. In this case, I just know it's just Shane and Bonnie. It could be whoever, right? In this case, and then I have the time there. If I wanted to add more information about this, I could have some kind of prerequisites or something like that. Hey, discussion to do this, some agenda items, etc. I can use the scheduling assistant as well. So on the top, there's a scheduling assistant. If I click on that, it'll show me when what the availability is of those individuals. So if their calendars are free and open, as I kind of see right now, then great. If they had some conflicts, then they would show up as busy during those times. So it's really up to us in understanding, what type of scheduling you want to do. But again, you can send this whole thing out in Outlook as well. So whatever you prefer. So in this case, I'll just quickly send this meeting out. So now I have a meeting set at that time for our group, right? And let's say I made a mistake here by setting up a meeting while we're already in a meeting. So instead of that, I can just quickly edit it, and I can change the details to, instead of 2, I'll say 3. And of course, it wasn't a mistake. It was a planned activity that I just did, but good way to kind of check out that editing feature. So now the moving is shifted, right? All the attendees will get a notification. They'll get the meeting invite, and if they open their Teams calendar or Outlook calendar, they'll see this kind of as an option. So as a user, here's something cool about Teams, which I'm really passionate about, is meetings are accessible before, during, and after. And what I mean by that is, and many of you might have this experience already, but the meeting's set for the future date, right? So I can access it before the meeting even starts. And what does that mean? So if I click on the meeting, I get the information, which is great. Here's the join code. If you have a conference line, it would show up here as well. That'll be based on agency to agency, right? If you have that as a feature or not. But I can start chat conversations and upload files to this meeting before the meeting even starts. So perfect example for say an EA, or say somebody who's helping run a meeting or PMing the meeting, whatnot. You can have a chat going on with the users, right? So I can say at Bonnie, and at symbol, again, it's calling their attention to it, right? At Shane, can you please ensure that the doc is updated and we have what we need for this? I'll be running late, 2 minutes, right? So instead of sending an email out, I have everything just kind of organized within the meeting itself. So this chat lives in the meeting itself, so it doesn't go away, and that history always remains there too. So now Bonnie and Shane, or whoever I'm trying to address, they can answer, they can reply back. The same kind of rich chat features are here. So instead of creating a net new chat or using the older group chat, I can just have that chat within the meeting itself, so that, say 2 weeks from now, and this goes back to accessing a meeting from before. Let's say it's 2 weeks from now, and I'm like, hey, no, we had that conversation and nobody updated that document, right? And this is this is probably a negative example, but ultimately nobody did what I asked them to do. Do I have a track record of me asking them so I can kind of report them in that HR channel? So I can go back into that same meeting, that in this case, a prior meeting, let's just even say, I can go to chat and I can access that history right here. So a great kind of tool that's available for everybody. That persistent chat history is there. You can talk about the meetings. You can upload files if you wanted to for the meeting, right? So what files do you want to talk about, what you want to discuss? The meeting details are there, and scheduling is there as well. Not only that, but within the meeting, you can also take meeting notes. So every meeting can have their own type of wiki page as well. So that's a great way to do. And I'll kind of quickly go into a faux meeting here where we'll kind of show you what that meeting looks like. But it's a great kind of, great action item, agenda, wiki page to really keep those notes together. And those things, again, are accessible by everybody before, during, or after the meeting. So I think in that sense, scheduled meetings are very great because you're planning that. But instead of scheduling a meeting, say you just wanted to just quickly ramp up, right? I got some notice saying that, hey, guess what? As of 8/21, employees and shifts can start going back into work, right? So that's late breaking news. I don't want to wait till 3 to talk about this. I want to meet now. So there's 2 ways. If I just want to meet with Shane, just so he's aware, because I have other meetings to go, I can just quickly create a chat with Shane and then just that way set the call button. If I'm in the calendar, there's a meet now option, so I can click that. And this is kind of a virtual lobby, so it says like, okay, what do you want to do for this meeting? Okay, I want to talk about Teleworking Update 821, and I'll just say join this meeting. So all I've done right now is I've created a virtual conference, and nobody's invited yet, but the meeting's open, the meeting's live right now because I'm meeting now. And now I just invite the people that I want to. So if I just type in Shane real quick, it'll pull him into this meeting. If Shane's available, he can accept. If he's not available, he doesn't have to accept. That's really just what happens. And I see that it's still calling him. So we'll see if he's able to pick up or join. And I'll also just kind of add Brandon as well because there's an escalation. And I see that he's in the meeting now, right? Because Shane's in the meeting too. And if I look at participants, I see I'm in, Brandon's still being called, and Shane's in too. So now we can, just like you're doing any meeting within Teams, you have plenty of options to talk about. And this is a good chance to start talking about all those different options that are available here. So within this meeting, we can, obviously we're discussing that teleworking. Let's say I wanted to share my screen. I can even go here and actually share my desktop, my window, whatever that might be. If I wanted to actually take those notes, right, I kind of mentioned. So again, in the meeting itself, there's an option for the ellipses. I can click on those ellipses for more options. And one of those options is show meeting notes. So I can click on that. And here it says, do you want to take notes? I say yes, which now this whole meeting notes section is created specifically for this impromptu meeting so that we don't lose anything, right? So we're not wasting our time. So to-dos, important actions. I mean, you get the point. You can start adding different topics and genres and then start taking action items and notes right there within the meeting itself. And this is a collaborative space as well, so other people can add their content here too. Other than that, you do have the option to record your meetings as well. And again, that's utilizing the stream capability. So if I click record, it would start recording this meeting that we're having as well. So I click on that, and then that way, we can keep track of this impromptu meeting so that those decisions that are made within this meeting, in this collaborative environment, we can always refer back to, and again, understand what led to that discussion, right? What led to what going in the future. And I'll stop that meeting or stop recording for now for that. And that transcript would also be available. So if you wanted a transcription of that meeting, that's also possible within the meeting itself. And also within the meeting, you have chat too, right? Like, let's say you pulled in 3 people, but one person's at lunch and he can't really get off mute because he's, he just can't. And another person's in another meeting, but they want to kind of understand what this meeting is about. So they're kind of half paying attention, but that chat is always open within the meeting. And this is pretty powerful too, because if you think about it, you're in a meeting, you're chatting live as well. And maybe if you're working with the same person, then maybe you don't need to chat, but maybe there's 4, 5, 10, 15, 20 people in your meeting, and not everybody needs to talk about the main person who's presenting. So you could have a sidebar conversation with the guests or attendees and just say, Brandon, I'll get you that tomorrow in a meeting now, whatever that might be. So you're saying that you're in a meeting, but you're already pulled into a meeting, whatever the reasoning might be. It's a great way to kind of keep that chat. And again, this is also persistent. So not only the notes, the chat, the files that you share, the people that you met, the guest list, etc. Everything's kind of available. Even the recording is available in that chat section history. So say if I close this meeting out. And again, this was an impromptu kind of meet now meeting, right? So if I go back to my calendar, that's not there because I didn't schedule it, right? So it's a meet now, it's an impromptu conference, but where did all that go? We had that conversation, where did all that history go? And that, if you go back to your chat, in your recent section, it's all listed right there. So you kind of see, the name of that meeting that I had, Teleworking Update 821. If I click on that, here's our entire history. So I can see the meeting notes that were there, I can see the recording that was there, I can see the chats that we had. So even in an impromptu meeting, you're not losing your information. It's at your fingertips. You can access it before, during, or after. And it's a great way to really capitalize on the fact that you're in a virtual environment, but you're still staying grounded to the points that you want to make, and also the decisions that are going to come as an outcome. So, very positive, very powerful tool there. With that said, I do want to take a quick pause again. Is there any questions that I can address from a quick meetings perspective. I know I want to be cognizant of the time here too, but anybody, any questions that I can help address?
Real quick, this actually isn't related to meetings, but I did have a question when you were going over co-authoring earlier. If a document was edited and you wanted to see the previous version in order to compare the two, is that possible? Or if it were edited in error, can you retrieve the previous version? So if you don't mind going over version history, which I don't think you can get to in Teams itself, but you can access it in either SharePoint or the desktop app.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's spot on. So say the version that I had in my group chat, right? Well, I actually deleted that document, but in the team, I'll go back into that. I know in my teleworking discussions channel, I have our draft here. So I'll click on files, you'll see it's right there. In our good friend ellipses here, it gives you more options. Ultimately, what I want to do is open this in SharePoint. So I can click on here, open in SharePoint, or if you saw before, if you were kind of a savvy participant, you saw that there's a quick button up here too. It does the same thing, but let's click on that. And now it'll open actually the proper SharePoint, and you'll see that the same one file that's there opens up. Here I get more robust options, so I can click on I can look at the version history, the access management, what permissions, etc. are given. So if I look at the document, our friend ellipses again gives you more options. Here I can look at version history as the ask that we have, and I can kind of see, okay, how many changes, how many versions were created. In this case, here are the 2 versions that were created and saved. I can even click that. I can either view it, I can restore it, or I can delete it. So it's really up to you how you want to kind of manage that, but you always do have the choice to revert back to something in case there was a mistake or something like that. And because it auto saves, you're going to have a lot of options available to potentially not lose the data, right? So then I think that's key. So hopefully that helps address it. Anything else in the chat that I can help address?
Here's a question I don't actually know the answer to. When you're looking at your recent documents, do you know how long those documents are there for recent? Like how long they stay recent, or does it just track all of your documents and put the most recent ones at top? I'm not actually sure.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I wouldn't know off the top of my head, but from what I do understand, that everything is searchable, everything is, you could find it. So it wouldn't shock me if in your experience you have, let's say 2-3 years of conversations in recent that just kind of trickle down, and you can always sort by modified. And again, I haven't gotten into the search thing, but if I search for teleworking, for example, let's say it's 2 years down the line, I search for teleworking. This searches for messages, people, and files, right? So messages being any message that was created that had that keyword in there, any person who has keyword teleworking in their name potentially, or more importantly, any files. So here, instead of looking at your recent from files, you have options to filter and get more granular into, okay, who was it modified by? You can even search for what type of file type, team, etc. So point being, I think the bigger question behind it potentially could be, can you still find your files even though it's not there? Yes, and in the recent section, you'll just have to see how far it goes until you have to scroll more.
I have one question. In this world where we have people who might not have used Facebook or other social mediums, what do we suggest for people who are just having trouble with the lingo itself, if they consider themselves maybe a little outdated? Is the help button with the training tabs the best suggestion we have as far as keeping current within Microsoft Teams?
Yeah, that's a great segue into a key benefit that's kind of embedded within Teams as well. So thanks for bringing that up. So yeah, to just kind of get general information and topics in your navigation pane all the way to the bottom, there's a little help button. If you click on that, you'll see that all kind of everything from basics to Teams, channels, messaging, pretty much everything that I've covered, but a lot more in depth and just kind of understanding from a fundamental perspective. It's all embedded right here. And even in the, and this is on the web version of it, but even on the desktop side, if you click on your desktop help and then kind of go through there, you might even have videos that are embedded, kind of micro learnings to really show you what they mean, right? So great resource right here. Definitely use it, read up about it. And outside of that, there's a lot of resources, especially for GCC, right? Because now we're talking about what are the difference between commercial and GCC and GCC High and DoD, et cetera. there's a lot of good content that's already created, and I would definitely leverage Success with Teams or even support.office.com. They have a lot of great videos on there, so a lot of different places to get the resources. And please feel free to follow up with us. We'll point you in the right direction. But till then, you have the help button, which is fantastic. Okay, so I know we have about 10 more minutes here, so I did want to kind of show a couple of more things, just kind of as best practices, right? So kind of rounding it all out, if you kind of notice what we've done so far, and I'll go back to my activity, right? I kind of mentioned before that, throughout the course of your engagement, this activity will kind of keep populating. If you want to go back to something specific, I just have to do is click on, oh, what was this little tag that somebody mentioned here. I'll click on that and it'll take me to that time and place where that specific thing was mentioned. So it's a great way to kind of manage your own kind of personal, follow-ups and to-dos and whatnot that you haven't covered yet, or throughout the end of the day, just keep doing that. So best practice is check out your activity feed and keep a pulse on what that is. Another thing is just kind of managing those notifications in general, right? So what populates into activity is a question that comes up quite often, and how do you manage that? So there's a great little settings pane that I wanted to kind of showcase real quick where it has all that information. So if you scroll all the way to the right, you have your initials. So my name's Akash Trivedi, that's why AT here. This would potentially be your initials, or if you have a picture of you, it would be right there. If you click on that, there's an option you can change that picture if you wanted to. You can change your status. So I kind of mentioned, right, if you're in a meeting, you might be busy. If you're presenting, it show up as presenting, available, etc. It's really a matter of gauging what the response time is going to be. So here you can set your status. If I'm saying busy, then that way people, when they look at me, they see like, okay, he's busy doing something. So the response might be later. But that doesn't mean that those messages won't come in right now. Versus if I go back to this, if I say do not disturb, this is a mode where even though if somebody tries to message me right now, it will come through. It'll still log in after I change my status again. I'll get the information, but it won't bother me. It won't disturb me as I'm presenting. So a good example, as I'm presenting this to the folks that are attending right now, this is from my Microsoft kind of work tenant. And I don't want this presentation to be disturbed by pop-ups from people that want something or need more information, but I'll get to that after the fact. So do not disturb is a great kind of setting. You can always reset that setting as well by just clicking reset, and that way Teams will automatically figure out if you're in a meeting, it'll show that status. If you're away from your computer, it'll show that status, so on and so forth. So great kind of way to manage your presence there. Second thing is set statuses away. So if you are going on PTO, or if you're going to be on extended leave, or whatever the situation might be, maybe you're just out for the day. It's a quick way for people to just hover over your name and understand where you are and why you may or may not be replying back. So quick way to set your statuses. And then here's where the settings is. So here's where I was kind of referring to your notifications. So I'll get into the theme real quick, but before that, notifications, what shows up in your activity? When do you want to be notified? And here is a plethora of options for you to explore, depending on how you like your information. If you are a type of person that loves an influx of information, you don't want to miss a beat, then adjust these settings so that every time, say, somebody is liking a post that you have or liking a message, you get a reaction or you get some type of notification, right? An email or a banner notification, or you can turn it off. By default, it's pretty moderate, the type of notifications that you get, kind of intuitive as well. But some people just don't want to be bothered. In a lot of cases, sometimes I'll set my notifications where only if somebody used that @ symbol and did that virtual tap on the shoulder, then notify me. Otherwise, there's just too much information out there. So, to each their own, but play around with these settings and you'll see what works for you and what doesn't. Within the settings window, there's a general option too. So I kind of mentioned, there's little tweaks that you can do to make it more personable and useful as well. So you have dark modes, you have high contrast modes, so those that might be a little bit more vision impaired, or if they just enjoy this type of kind of a setting, a couple of neat options there that's available for you. And then privacy is, again, I kind of mentioned that there was a do not disturb mode. So here you can actually say, you know what, have everybody not be able to reach me, but my manager be able to reach me, which is pretty important, right? If my manager is pinging me for an emergent hot issue, then maybe I want that person to come through to me. So here, if you say manage priority access and you add the person, say Bonnie, for example, this way, every time Bonnie now messages me, even if I'm in do not disturb, that message will come through because I'm saying, hey, she's a priority for me. So another option there that you can take. And, just play around with the settings, understand what you can and can't do. There's also a quick little shortcut button. So for those that are very, hey, I don't want to click around, I just want to use shortcuts. It kind of gives you a list of all the shortcuts that are available in Teams, which are really cool. I think, I don't know, there's a couple of favorites of mine. Start new chat, Alt-N, for example. Instead of clicking up in the chat window here, I just click Alt-N if I'm in another meeting, so I can quickly just start typing. And there's a lot of different kind of those settings too. So play around with them. A lot of information. So both information hubs, I would say, on your help and training at the bottom, and then of course in your settings and notifications here. And there's a lot more that we can also go through, but hopefully we'll cover a lot more in the advanced sessions as well. So with that said, I just want to pause again for some more questions that hopefully I can address, or if there's something that's still looming that we haven't touched on from the basics perspective.
Judging by the questions that I'm seeing, that I have seen in the question, right now there's nothing pressing right now, other than, okay, well, there's one question. Is there a way to allow for private note taking? And I wanted to know if you wanted to address that verbally.
I guess private note taking. So what I would do is just, if you're used to OneNote, that's your kind of personal notebook until you share it out. So I'm not sure if you've seen it, but like ultimately, say you're if you from the team's perspective, maybe I'll just say if you're in a, well, I can just open it, right? So I can say that I can open my OneNote, and this is pretty much your notebook, right? Your digital notebook, rather. So if you're taking notes personally, you can have your own pages. You can create that, and then from there you can, kind of manage what you're trying to do. I'm not sure if you had a specific scenario in mind where you're saying that I want to take notes for a specific purpose that would be in Teams but nobody else can see. That to me sounds like a Word document that you can just kind of keep trust on, or something else. So maybe some more clarity on the question, unless Shane or Brandon, you guys have a better option there, because I'm sure there's plenty of ways to address that.
No, that's a fair way to address it. It just said private note taking. And honestly, I wasn't sure if that was referring to the Teams portion of notes, or it's just a way to record notes by yourself. So you took that the same way I did. So that's fine.
Cool, thanks. Well, yeah, and again, if you have more questions, please put in the chat. I know people are responding as well, and I hopefully, I know we have 3 minutes now. I want to be cognizant of time, and I apologize again for the late start. We're just kind of working through some little technical little difficulties, I guess, there, but hopefully the session was valuable. Really appreciate your time. And again, this is just the fundamentals, right? Once you start playing around with Teams, you'll start getting more used to it. You'll getting more comfortable with it. You'll start finding new shortcuts and advanced ways to do things as well. So whether that's through a chat, through a team, you'll find your balance. You'll find your team as well. And a lot of times the biggest questions come up is when do I create a team versus a channel potentially, right? So if I wanted to talk on a new topic, do I create a new team or do I create a new channel? Those things kind of naturally will start coming up as more and more people use Teams, as you start building teams, attend these sessions, right? You'll get some pro tips, you'll get what other people are doing, other agencies are doing. It's a great way, great community, and you have your champions networks as well. So please reach out to us as well. Really appreciate everybody's time for joining as well. And thanks everybody for moderating too from our side. Really appreciate your support too. But we're still here for another couple of minutes, so feel free to ask away and we'll try to address them as we go. If not, then have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Actually, there is one question that popped up right quick that I think you can take about 30 seconds to show the answer to.
Sure.
And that is, so my boss is on Teams and set up a meeting. How do I get on? And I think you can take about 30 seconds and maybe just show the calendar portion and show how to log on. Yeah.
Yeah, so perfect. Yeah, so let's say this is the meeting that your boss set up and you're going to join that. So quickest way, just click on the meeting invite and then click on the join button, and then that'll be the time you join. So I kind of mentioned also before is you can join the meeting before, during, or after. So you don't have to wait necessarily for 3 p.m. to hit to start this meeting, right? So if you and your boss are ready to go, you can go into that meeting and click join, and you'll kick off that meeting. So it'll still be on the calendar, but it's up to you when you want to join. But that's the fastest way to do that.
And the other thing I would have you show is just very quickly show the use of the @ symbol. Someone wants to see the @ symbol being used. So if you could just use that very quickly, I think that'll
Yeah,
help.
actually, you know what? So as a, if you could do me a favor, actually, and if you could @ me, I think they'll see the difference there real quickly. So say I'm in a team, right? If you could just @ mention me in a chat, you'll see the notification versus just kind of saying, Akash, do this in this team or chat, whatever. So I think that's when you start realizing, okay, when I do this, what is the impact on the other individual's side, right? And that notification, once it comes through, it's really that virtual tap or virtual kind of like, hey, do this that way. So if it was in this team, for example, I would say a bad way of doing it would be Bonnie, do this, versus I start typing, I use the @ symbol and say BO. I click on her name, please do this. So you see that two differences. One is just says Bonnie do this, one says Bonnie, that's kind of highlighted, so it knows that I kind of @ mention. And when that @ mention happens, they get a notification in their activity. They can click on that activity, a banner message pops up as well. I think I'm on a different right now. So there you go. So I'm doing something completely irrelevant, and then all of a sudden I get this pop up here, I get a notification here, I get it in chat. If I click on my activity and click on that, I see that, oh, okay, here, Brandon mentioned me, and it says Akash Trivedi right here. So there you go. That's really the power of that @ mentioning. So when I did that to Bonnie, she gets the same kind of pop-up message. So it's a great way for me to follow up on items or to ensure that she or he got that message. All right. Well, again, thank you for everybody for your time, and really appreciate it. Hopefully, hopefully again the session was valuable. But we're still here for a couple more minutes. If you need to ask more questions, fire away. Seems like we're kind of running out of questions there, which is fine. But yeah, thanks to everybody again for joining. We'll conclude right now, and the chat session will still be open. So if you still have some remaining questions, again, the benefit of Teams, you can still address things even after the fact. But again, thanks for everybody for your time, and have a great afternoon.